Hello everyone, my name is Nika and you're welcome to the second episode of our podcast InstaFaces. And our today's guest is Marusa, and could you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Marusa, I'm 19 years old. Currently I'm a student, but today I'm gonna be like an social media expert.
The topic of our podcast today is comparison, and I think it's something very important to talk about because comparison is actually natural and many people face with such problem in their daily life. The thing is that people have always compared themselves to others to understand where they stand in society, like at school, with friends, or at work. But social media changed their perceptions of it completely. Before social media, we used to compare ourselves to around 10 people, but now we are comparing ourselves to thousands of people, influencers, celebrities, successful entrepreneurs, and whoever. But one really important thing to understand is that almost every person today is on social media, about 9 times out of 10 using YouTube, around 63% use TikTok and 61% use Instagram. So basically social media isn't just an app for teenagers anymore, it's a part of their everyday life. So Marusia, do you think teenagers today can realistically avoid social media, or it's impossible nowadays?
Of course not. I don't think that it's possible now, not just for teenagers, but for the average person as well. The only thing I can imagine to completely avoid social media is just not having a phone at all.
I also do think that it's impossible to avoid it because in our era we have social media around us all the time, and it can be like close to your friend or just in the cafe or whatever. So like everywhere you go, you can always see some news or some content, I don't know, some TVs around, so you're always in it. And by the way, did you know that the average spending time on social media is around 5 hours per day for a teen? So that's why I think social media didn't create comparison, but it made it constant. Now we're not just comparing ourselves sometimes anymore. It's happening literally every day and multiple times a day without us even noticing. Every time we scroll, we're evaluating our life compared to someone else's, and immediately your mood changes, right?
You know, sometimes I have like up to 8 hours of screen time, and if it goes about comparing yourself to others, it's hard to avoid. Of course, it affects our mood because what we see online often isn't real. We experience our own life fully with all the imperfect moments, while we usually only see the polished highlights of others.
And the real problem is that our brain treats all of this as real social competition, like we lose something due to someone's wins, even though many of these people are strangers for us, living completely different lives. Especially the influencers who are making us feel like we are competing with them, but of course not, and the people are just trying to show their most perfect life and get people's attention. Do you think that people compared themselves this much before social media existed?
People have always compared themselves to others. It's part of our society, but of course everything has changed because before the social circle was narrower, and now that we have the internet, we have access to almost everyone's life on the planet. For example, now women compare themselves to world-class models, when before we only saw our neighbors or family members.
When do you notice yourself comparing your life the most? After scrolling for a while or talking to your friends?
It depends on the situation, but most of the time when I see that someone has something I want, I feel a bit upset. And I wouldn't say this happens only on social media, it happens in real life too, but on social media you're more likely to come across these kind of examples.
As for me, I'm getting mostly influenced because of social media, but I'm trying not to focus too much on it, not to focus too much on this. Like vacations, I see some cool presents or whatever, and I'm trying to be realistic, and I think that is a thing which everyone should keep doing. Another thing researchers talk about a lot is self-esteem. When we constantly see people who seem more successful, more attractive, or happier than us, our brain starts thinking that we are falling behind. Studies show that teenagers who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media have a noticeably higher risk of mental health problems like anxiety and depression. But as we can see, the majority of teenagers spend much more than 3 hours. Sometimes it's not even 5, it can be like 8, 9 and more. And what do you think social media affects confidence more than real life interactions?
It generally depends on how susceptible a person is. Younger people are much more likely to be influenced by idealized images than those who already have a well-formed sense of itself. And again, in the real world, there isn't nearly as much perfection or success to measure yourself against.
Social media also creates something psychologists call FOMO, the feeling of missing out. You open Instagram and suddenly it feels like everyone is traveling, building businesses, getting into relationships, or achieving something, for example, and you feel like you're the only one living the regular day. Even if you were happy 5 minutes ago, one scroll can suddenly make you feel like you're literally falling behind. But we rarely, or sometimes even almost never, stop to think that people we are comparing ourselves to are just people as well, and they have their own struggles, insecurities, and problems behind the cameras. So what we see is only a small, carefully chosen part of their lives. Have you ever felt like your life isn't enough after scrolling for just a few minutes?
Of course, especially when I see that someone in 20 has an apartment, a car, and a stable job, I feel that I have to speed up and that what I have now is nothing. But it's always important to assess the situation soberly and at some points even slow down in pursuit of success.
Another reason social media affects mental health is actually biological. Platforms are designed to trigger dopamine. Likes, notifications, views, and whatever, they make us check our phones again and again. Many people check their phones more than 80 to 100 times per day on average. And do you think social media is becoming more addictive over time or not?
In fact, I think the rush of dopamine isn't as bad as people make it out to be, but there should be a limit to everything. I've noticed it more how people go crazy over likes, checking views every second. That's a bit scary. I see a bit of myself in this because there's a certain amount of dependence on others' people's opinion.
Oh, by the way, I think the problem of dopamine is actually huge, and especially light dopamine. It's not just in the context of social media, it also plays a big role in how we constantly seek stimulation and validation, which makes comparison almost automatic. When our brain gets used to quick rewards and endless input, we start to unconsciously measure our lives against others just to feel something. And in that process, it becomes easier to forget that what we are comparing ourselves to is only a highlight, not reality. But the last point of our podcast is that most comparisons online are silent. People don't say it out loud, but almost everyone experiences it. You see someone's post and in a second your brain starts analyzing your own life. I wonder how many people actually notice how much social media affects them. What do you think?
I think most people don't see the problem with social media specifically. People tend to think it's their lives are that upsetting them, not their phones. But a healthy comparison can also serve as motivation to improve your life. So guys, live a real life. Social media just the pictures, don't take it too seriously.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us today. That's basically all, and I will be extremely happy to see you in our next episodes. Bye bye.